We continue today with Jeremiah Burroughs' The Rare Jewel of Christian Contentment. We saw yesterday, or in the first reading, the definition of contentment. Contentment is the inward, quiet, gracious frame of spirit, freely submitting to and taking pleasure in God's disposal in every condition. And so we'll continue now with what contentment is opposed to, what it does not look like. Contentment is opposed to sinful shiftings and shirkings to get relief and help. We see this kind of thing in Saul running to the witch of Endor and offering sacrifice before Samuel came. Nay, good Jehoshaphat joins himself with Azariah, 2 Chronicles 20:35. And Asa goes to Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, for help, not relying upon the Lord, 2 Chronicles 16:7 and 8. Though the Lord had delivered the Ethiopian army into his hands, consisting of 1,000,000. 2 Chronicles 14:12. And good Jacob joined with his mother in lying to Isaac, not content to await God's time and use God's means. He made too great a haste and went out of his way to procure the blessing which God intended for him. Thus do many through the corruption of their hearts and the weakness of their faith, because they are not able to trust God and follow him fully in all things and always. For this reason the Lord often follows the saints with many more sore temporal crosses, as we see in the case of Jacob, though they obtain the mercy. It may be that your carnal heart thinks, I do not care how I am delivered, if only I may be freed from it. Is it not so many times in some of your hearts, when any cross or affliction befalls you? Do you not experience such workings of spirit as this? Oh, if only I could be delivered from this affliction in any way, I would not care. Your hearts are far from being quiet. This sinful shifting is the next thing which is in opposition to the quietness which God requires in a contented spirit. Number 8. The last thing is that quietness of spirit is the opposite of the desperate risings of the heart against God by way of rebellion. That is the most abominable. I hope many of you have learned so far to be content as to restrain your hearts from such disorders. Yet the truth is that not only wicked men, but sometimes the very saints of God find the beginnings of this when an affliction remains for a long time, and there is a very severe and heavy debt indeed upon them, and it strikes them as it were in the master vein. They find in their hearts something of a rising against God, though their thoughts begin to bubble and affections begin to move in rebellion against God himself. Especially is this the case with those who, besides their corruptions, have a large measure of melancholy. The devil works both upon the corruptions of their hearts and the melancholy disease of their bodies, and though much grace may lie underneath, yet under affliction there may be some risings against God himself. Now Christian quietness is opposed to all these things. When affliction comes, whatever it is, you do not murmur, though you feel it, though you make your cry to God, though you desire to be delivered and seek it by all means, yet you do not murmur or repine, you do not fret or vex yourself. There is not a tumultuousness of spirit in you, not an instability. There are not distracting fears in your hearts, no sinking discouragements, no unworthy shifts, no risings in rebellion against God in any way. This is quietness of spirit under an affliction, and that is the second thing, when the soul is so far able to bear an affliction as to keep quiet under it. Number 3. Now the next thing I want to explain in the description of this is it is an inward, quiet, gracious frame of spirit. It is a frame of spirit and also a gracious frame. Contentment is a soul business. First, it is inward. Secondly, quiet. Thirdly, it is a quiet frame of spirit. I mean 3 things when I say that contentment consists in the quiet frame of the spirit of a man. 1, that it is a grace that spreads itself through the whole soul. It is in the judgment, that is, the judgment of the soul of a man or woman who tends to quiet the heart. In my judgment, I am satisfied. It is one thing to be satisfied in one's judgment and understanding so as to be able to say this is the hand of God and what is suitable to my condition or best for me. Although I do not see the reason for the thing, yet I am satisfied in my judgment about it. Then it is in the thought of a man or a woman. As my judgment is satisfied, so my thoughts are kept in order. And then it comes to the will. My will yields and submits to it. My affections are likewise kept in order, so that it goes through the whole soul. There is in some there is a partial contentment. It is not the frame of the soul, but some part of the soul that has contentment. Many a man may be satisfied in his judgment about a thing who cannot for his life rule his affections, nor his thoughts, nor his will. I do not doubt that many of you know this is your own experience, if you observe the workings of your own hearts. Can you not say when a certain affliction befalls you, I can bless God that I am satisfied in my judgment about it? I have nothing to say about it in respect of my judgment about it. I see the hand of God, and I should be content. Yea, in my judgment I am satisfied that mine is a good condition. But I cannot for my life rule my thoughts and will and my affections. Methinks I feel my heart heavy and sad more than it should be, yet my judgment is satisfied. This seemed to be the position of David in Psalm 42. O my soul, why art thou disquieted? As far as David's judgment went, there was a contentedness. That is, his judgment was satisfied as to the work of God on him. He was troubled, but he knew not why. O my soul, why art thou cast down within me? This is a very good psalm for those who feel a fretting, discontented sickness in their hearts at any time to read and to sing. He says once or twice in that psalm, Why art thou cast down, O my soul? And in verse 5, And why art thou disquieted within me? Hope thou in God, for I shall yet praise him for the help of his countenance. David had enough to quiet him, and what he had prevailed with his judgment. But after it had prevailed with his judgment, he could not get any further. He could not get this grace of contentment to go through the whole frame of his soul. Sometimes a great deal of disturbance is involved in getting contentment into people's judgments, that is, to satisfy their judgment about their condition. If you come to many whom the hand of God is upon perhaps in a grievous manner, and seek to satisfy them and to tell them they have no cause to be so disquieted. Oh, no cause, says the troubled spirit? Then there is no cause for anyone to be disquieted. There has never been such an affliction as I have. And they have 100 things with which to evade the force of what is said to them, so you cannot so much as get at their judgments to satisfy them. But there is a great deal of hope of attaining contentment if once your judgments are satisfied, if you can sit down and say in your judgment, I see good reason to be contented. Yet even when you've got so far, you may still have much to do with your hearts afterwards. There is such unruliness in our thoughts and affections that our judgments are not always able to rule our thoughts and affections. That is what makes me say that contentment is an inward, quiet, gracious frame of soul. The whole soul, judgments, thoughts, will, affections, are all satisfied and quiet. I suppose that merely in opening this subject you begin to see that it is a lesson that you need to learn, and that if contentment is like this, then it is not easily obtained. Number 2. Spiritual contentment comes from the frame of the soul. The contentment of a man or woman who is rightly content does not come so much from outward arguments or from any outward help as from the disposition of their own hearts. The disposition of their own hearts causes and brings forth this gracious contentment rather than any external thing. Let me explain myself. Someone is disturbed, suppose it be a child or a man or a woman. If you come and bring some great thing to please them, perhaps it will quiet them and they will be contented. It's the thing you bring that quiets them, not the disposition of their own spirit, not any good temper in their own hearts, but the external thing you bring them. When a Christian is content in the right way, the quiet comes from the temper and disposition of his own heart than from any external argument or from the possession of anything in this world. I would unfold this further to you with this simile. To be content as a result of some external thing is like warming a man's clothes by the fire. But to be content through an inward disposition of the soul is like the warmth that a man's clothes have from the natural heat of the body. A man who is healthy in body puts on his clothes, and perhaps at first on a cold morning they feel cold. But after he's had them on a little while, they are warm. Now how did they get warm? They were not near the fire. No, this came from the natural heat of his body. Now, when a sickly man, the natural heat of whose body is deteriorated, puts on his clothes, they do not get hot after a long time. He must warm them by the fire, and even then they will soon be cold again. This will illustrate the very different contentments of men. Some are very gracious, and when an affliction comes on them, though at first it seems a little cold, after they have borne it a while, the very temper of their hearts makes their afflictions easy. They are quiet under it, and do not complain of any discontent. But now there are others that have an affliction upon them and have not this good temper in their hearts. Their afflictions are very cold and troublesome to them. Maybe if you bring some external arguments to bear upon them, like the fire that warms the clothes, they will be quiet for a while. But alas, if they lack a gracious disposition in their own hearts, that warmth will not last long. The warmth of the fire, that is, a contentment that results merely from external arguments, will not last long. But that which comes from the gracious temper of one's spirit will last. When it comes from the spirit of a man or a woman, that is true contentment. We shall, however, have more to say explaining the mystery of contentment. Number 3. It is the frame of spirit that shows the habitual character of this grace of contentment. Contentment is not merely one act, just a flash in a good mood. You may find men and women who are in a good mood and will be very quiet, but this will not hold. It is not a constant course. It is not the constant tenor of their spirits to be holy and gracious under affliction. Now I say that contentment is a quiet frame of spirit, and by that I mean that you should find men and women in a good mood not only at this or that time, but to be the constant tenor and temper of their hearts. A Christian who in the constant tenor and temper of his heart can carry himself quietly with constancy has learned this lesson of contentment. Otherwise, his Christianity is worth nothing, for no one, however furious in his discontent, will not be quiet when he is in a good mood. So first, contentment is a heart business. Secondly, it is the quiet of the heart. And thirdly, it is the frame of the heart. And we'll stop there for today and pick up the fourth aspect of contentment tomorrow, which is that contentment is the gracious frame of heart. So I hope you are finding this book helpful. I certainly have through the years. The copy I'm reading right now is highlighted in several places and has been meaningful to me. And I hope in hardship and in good that I will find Paul's reality to be my own, that I will be content and in whatever circumstance to rest in God. So hope you have a good day, and thanks for watching.